Greetings, I'm the Bulgarian Troglodyte. Today I'm gonna do a response video to Solitary Ronin once again. So he did this really fun video about his alternative CC40 box set. So if you didn't know, Criterion recently announced this huge box set for their 40th anniversary. And in that box set they have 40 different films, kind of classics and like popular Criterion films. And there's been lots of debate about that box set. Many people think it's kind of unnecessary or too expensive or cash grab or whatever. I don't really have any strong feelings about the set. I've actually seen all the 40 films in that upcoming Criterion set. And I like or love all the films that are included in the set. So in that way, I like the films that they put in the set, but I could never afford the set. And then again, I also own many of the films already, some of them on Criterion and some of them on like other labels as well. Yeah. So I'm not gonna get that set, but I think it's like a interesting set and the variety of films there I think is pretty good. But then Ronin came up with this idea of doing his alternative take on the set, so he picked 40 films that he would have for a CC40 box set. And I just thought that that was such a fun idea to do. Also, this isn't meant to be taken that seriously. And my criteria for these films here was mostly just that they are films that I really like myself, but I also wanted to have some variety here. So this isn't like my top 40 Criterion films of all time or anything like that, because I wanted to again have some variety, and I also wanted to have some documentaries here. So I put 3 documentaries here, even though I'm not a documentary guy that much. I usually like to learn about things through maybe reading articles rather than watching documentaries, although I like to watch documentaries here and there, but it's kind of a form of filmmaking that I'm not that into. But I thought that in this box set I would want to have some documentaries that I think are really great. And then I tried to include quite a few different countries and different types of films. And of course, you can probably guess many of these films if you watch my channel regularly, as I have talked about these films in other videos. Many of these I've talked about so many times, so I'm not gonna talk about them that much here. But these are in alphabetical order, so let's start. So we have Jean-Pierre Melville's Army of Shadows, which I think is one of the top 5 war films ever made. It's incredible visually, has this great sense of paranoia, great atmosphere, and it operates in this nice gray area where I think all war films should operate. So I think this is another masterpiece. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You can find it on Criterion, but also there is a UK release for it. I have the Studio Canal Melville box set, which I really like. So yeah. Then we have Parajonov's The Color of Pomegranates, which is such a beautiful film. Again, a non-narrative film. It's all about the beautiful shots. Yeah, it's kind of one of the best films that are just about the visuals and nothing else really. So yeah, great film. Then we have Come and See, which is obviously a very obvious pick here, as it is one of the best war films ever, one of the most harrowing films ever. I think there is a war film in this list that is even better, but this is definitely up there with the greatest war films ever, and I think this is a film that everybody should see at least once in their lifetime. And I really need to watch it again, as it has been like I think like 6.5 years since I watched it. So yeah. Then I think this is a pretty underrated one. So it's Nagisa Oshima's Death by Hanging. To me, this is one of the best Japanese films ever made, but people don't really bring it up to the conversation usually, and people don't really talk about it. But I mean, it has a pretty high average rating in Letterboxd. I think it's like 4.0 at the moment, if I remember correctly. And people who watch it tend to like it, but I feel like people just never really talk about it, and you don't really find it in the greatest films of all time lists. Even though to me it's like one of the best kind of political satires ever, and it's about capital punishment, it's about the tension between Korea and Japan, so very relevant themes. And even though it has that heavy subject matter, it's actually kind of funny in a way. Like I said, it's a satire, so yeah, incredible film. Yeah. Then we have Buñuel's The Exterminating Angel, which is my favorite Buñuel film. Still a very relevant film. And of course, Buñuel um, tackled these themes in many of his films, but I think this is the film where the themes really work so well. And also, this is a film that you can analyze from many different angles. Yeah, but it's an incredible film. Then we just did a podcast episode on this. It's Fellini's Satyricon, so I don't actually have 8.5 here, which would have been the obvious choice, or even La Dolce Vita would have been the obvious choice, but this is my favorite Fellini film, and now that I've watched it for the third time, it just confirmed that opinion of mine. And I'm glad that my co-host Altes actually ended up really loving this film, and he called it a masterpiece and a 5-star film. So I was really happy about that, as I didn't know how Altes would react to this film, as this is one of those films that it's quite contentious and something that you never know how people will react to this film, as it is so mental and over the top and grotesque, and yeah. But I think it's just such a masterpiece. Yeah. I think if you love Peter Greenaway, you will probably like this film, as I think Peter Greenaway has kind of taken lots of inspiration from this film. At least it seems like that. Yeah. Then we have my favorite Fassbinder film and one of my top 10 favorite films of all time, Fox and His Friends. I also wanted to have Berlin Alexanderplatz here, but I thought that, yeah, it's 15 hours and stuff, so it wouldn't fit the box set and stuff. And then it was really hard also to pick this 40 because I love the Criterion Collection. And if you look at my favorite films of all time, so many of them are on the Criterion Collection. So it was really hard to do a list of 40 films because I would have rather done a list of maybe 100 films. But yeah, this we also did the podcast on. This was actually our first episode of the podcast, was a discussion of Fox and His Friends. But yeah, incredible film about class relations. Then we have Kobayashi's Harakiri, which is in the conversation of being like the greatest film of all time. A samurai film, one of the best looking black and white films ever. Incredibly dense film thematically. Again, it's a criticism of the samurai, but also criticism of hierarchies and power and authority and wider society and things like that. So it's a very multifaceted film, and it works perfectly on every single level. And this is just one of those awe-inspiring films that when you watch it, you think that how can there be people that are this level of genius? So yeah. Then we have one of the best films of the French New Wave. It's Alain René's Hiroshima Mon Amour, written by the great Marguerite Duras, who we have actually for a second time in a bit. But yeah, incredibly beautiful and hypnotic film. Quite a very weird film, and it can feel a bit cold stylistically, but there is a romance there, and I think it's a very emotional film, even though it has that kind of cold experimental new wave thing going for it as well. Then we have the human condition, so we have two Kobayashi films here. I tried to not have two films from the same director, but I think Kobayashi is one of those directors that I just have to have both Harakiri and the human condition here, as those are just such masterpieces. And I think Ronin had the human condition and also Samurai Rebellion, I think so. Yeah. But this might be the greatest film of all time. At least it's in the conversation. So then we have Marguerite Duras film India Song, which is an absolute masterpiece, a very difficult film, very experimental film. It's all about the aesthetic and then the narration. Yeah, it's about colonialism. Yeah, but it's a very difficult film, but for some reason I really love it and connect to it, even though I think I don't fully understand the film yet. But we will do this for the podcast sometime next year, so we'll see when that happens. Then, of course, I have to have some Antonioni here, as he might be the best Italian director of all time, although it's hard to say, as we have people like Fellini and Visconti and others. Rossellini. Oh, now I actually realized that I didn't put a Rossellini film in the list, and maybe I should have the Rossellini film here, but I'm not sure which one I would have put. I mean, my personal favorite is Europa 51, but probably if I went with a more objective pick, it probably would have been Rome Open City, but anyway, yeah, Rossellini, I'll just give him a shout out. Yeah. But yeah, L'Aventura is one of Antonioni's best, if not his best. I also thought about La Notte and Red Desert and Leclerc, but I ended up going with L'Aventura. Then another Italian filmmaker is Luchino Visconti with Le Notti Bianche, and again, many people would go with The Leopard, maybe, but this is my personal favorite. I have a deep emotional connection to this work. I think it's aesthetically incredibly beautiful, and it's another film we did a podcast episode on. And if you love this film, you should also read the Dostoevsky short story White Nights, which this is an adaptation of, as the short story is one of the best short stories ever written. I absolutely loved it when I read it earlier this year. And this is actually only on the Criterion DVD. So if it ended up on a box set like this, it would be a Blu-ray upgrade, which would be great. But when I watched this on Criterion channel earlier this year, it was in 1080p there, so maybe it will come on Blu-ray someday, hopefully. Then I think Ronin also had this one, Letter Never Sent by Mihail Kalatozov. It's in our podcast schedule for later this year, so look out for that. But this is just one of those very awe-inspiring films. You are just constantly thinking that how did they pull this off in 1960? Like, how can you have black and white cinematography of that level? Did they actually lit the Siberian forests on fire and stuff like that? Then there are some incredible close-ups as well, like near the end, like of this old man, for example. You probably know what a close-up I mean if you have seen the film, but it's, I think, very harrowing looking shot. Love that. But yeah, this is to me just one of the greatest films of all time. Incredible stuff. You can watch this on YouTube in like 4K quality, so go do that. Then we have Manila in the Close of Light by Lino Brocca, film from the Philippines. Incredible film all about exploitation, all about the people that are oppressed. So it's very important thematically, and the filmmaking here is just absolutely stunning. And I'm actually thinking that even though this isn't on our podcast schedule currently, but I might kind of postpone one of the films that we have on the schedule and then replace one of the films with this, because I'm kind of dying to talk about this and I've been thinking about it a lot lately, so I really want to rewatch it. Yeah, so we'll see if I end up doing that soon, but I'll of course let you know. Well, the next one we already have on our podcast schedule, so it's František Vlačiļ's Marketa Lazarova, in my opinion, the greatest film of the Czech New Wave, which produced lots of great films. But this is just one of those aesthetic masterpieces. It's a very dense, difficult film. I don't really know exactly what it is trying to say, but I just love the mood and aesthetic so much that I cannot help but absolutely adore this film. Yeah. Looking forward to talking about it on the podcast. I think it will be very challenging to talk about, but I've kind of noticed on the podcast that the ones that are the most challenging end up often being the best conversations. So yeah, we'll see. Then we have Paul Schrader's Mishima, A Life in Four Chapters, which in my opinion is by far Paul Schrader's best film, although I actually haven't seen that many films from him, but to me this is like one of the greatest films of all time. aesthetically probably like top 10 level. It's just so incredible and very interesting narrative as well, and it's a very unique film. Yeah, great stuff. And the Criterion release is really amazing. I have that one, so one of my favorite releases that I have. Then I of course had to have one Robert Bresson film here, as he is one of my favorite filmmakers, and I also think he's in the conversation for being like the greatest filmmaker ever. But I really struggled to pick which one I would put here. It was like between like A Man Escaped, or Hazard Balthazar, and Musette. Although I could have gone with Diary of a Country Priest, that's currently only on Criterion DVD, and hope that gets upgraded. And of course, there are films like L'Argent and Pickpocket, which are really good films as well, but those aren't my personal favorites. So I went with Musette because I think it just has so much emotional resonance and it's such a darkly beautiful film. Yeah. Then I put Mulholland Drive here, which is my second favorite film of all time. I actually didn't put my favorite film of all time here, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. It was on the list at first, but I ended up removing it because I thought that it would be incomplete without the other Twin Peaks stuff on the list, which isn't on Criterion. So I ended up just putting Mulholland Drive here. Of course, there are often rumors that maybe the Twin Peaks The Return and the original series will come to Criterion in a box set or something, but we'll see if that ever happens. Yeah, and of course I also wanted to put Blue Velvet here, but I had to kind of just say that no, I cannot just fill this list with David Lynch stuff, even though I love him. Then we have the first documentary here. Again, like I said, there are three documentaries in total, and to me, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever watched. It's Paris is Burning, which is about the kind of queer scene in New York. It's from 1990. It's an incredible documentary, very joyous documentary, one that I need to rewatch. Yeah, so I love that one. And one of the other documentaries is kind of related to that in terms of subject matter. Then we have Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders, which has been one of my absolute favorite films of all time since like 2017, which was kind of the big year for me when I really got into cinema, like and like world cinema and stuff. So, but again, like, this would be in the top 10 of all time if we rank films based on the aesthetic, and it's also a very emotional film, great performances. Yeah, just a stunning film. Of course, you could have put them some other Wim Wenders stuff here as well. I love his new film Perfect Days a lot. Then this is my silent film pick here. Of course, we could have had more silent films, but again, this is arguably the greatest silent film. You could even say it's the greatest film of all time. So it's Carl Tryer's The Passion of Joan of Arc. Yeah, incredible film. And I think Criterion never released Napoleon by Abel Gance because I think that's also in the conversation for being the greatest silent film. And then, of course, there is F.W. Murnau and many great directors of that time. But yeah, this is such an incredible piece of art. Then we have probably these days, this is probably actually my favorite Kubrick film. It's Paths of Glory. Yeah, this is up there with the like top three war films for me. It kind of says everything about the human condition that you can say, also aesthetically, it's great. And when you actually watch this film multiple times, you start seeing that it's actually a funny film, which obviously war films usually aren't funny. But if you like look at how some of the people in the military, the kind of higher ups talk, and they say like absolutely ridiculous stuff and like evil stuff with kind of a smirk in their face and with this kind of over the top. They say some things like kind of an over the top way, and I think that some of those things are really funny, at least to me. But yeah, maybe it's just me. But and one of the greatest endings of all time as well. It's such an emotional and humanistic way to end the film. Then we have Ingmar Bergman's Persona. And again, the co-host of my podcast, Altes, is finally gonna go see this film. He's gonna see it in the cinema. I'm hoping that he will love this film. I think he will. But yeah, this is also in the conversation for being the greatest film of all time. It's just absolutely mind blowing in terms of the narrative, but also just the themes and the aesthetic is incredible. The kind of contrast there and the performances here are incredible as well. The dialogue is incredible. Everything is incredible. So yeah. Then, of course, India is one of the cinematic powerhouses in the world, so I wanted to have at least one Indian film here. And instead of Satyajit Ray, I ended up going with Ritwik Kathak because even though I've only seen a couple Ritwik Kathak films, I actually find him maybe a bit more interesting than Satyajit Ray, even though obviously Ray is a great filmmaker and I admire Ray a lot. But I think Ritwik Kathak is maybe a bit more of my aesthetic. And I think this film, A River Called Titas, is in one of the Scorsese World Cinema box sets. I cannot remember which one it is from. But it's such an interesting film, and aesthetically, it's just absolutely incredible, and it's worth seeing just for the shots alone. And I love Ritwik Kathak's aesthetic. Obviously, many people would have gone with Cloud Capped Star, but I think I even like this one a bit more, even though it's a bit kind of all over the place in some ways and kind of bit weird in some ways. But I just really love this one. Yeah. Then another film that's in the conversation for being the greatest film of all time, it's Sanshou Dayu by the great Kenji Mizoguchi. And this is Mizoguchi's best film, in my opinion, although he made several masterpieces. To add to those masterpieces, he made many like really good and great films that are like near masterpieces. But this is also one of those human condition films that it kind of, if you really look at the film critically and deeply, it just says so much about what it means to be a human. It says so much about the corrupt world we live in, and it says so much about the issues that we face still to this day. And also aesthetically, the framing of the shots and the contrast, everything is just absolute perfection. Then we have Secrets and Lies by Mike Lee. This is a kind of a very personal pick here, as this is a film that just destroys me emotionally. I connect to it very heavily. I relate to it very heavily. I think it's such a beautiful film. I also wanted to have Mike Lee's Naked, but I ended up going with the kind of one that has the emotional resonance. So it's Secrets and Lies. Yeah, just an incredible film. Then the second documentary that we have here is Showa, obviously probably the greatest documentary ever made, something that I think everybody should watch, a very training watch. I remember I watched this in 2 days. In the first day I was like 2 hours, and the next day I was like 7 or whatever hours was left. And then after I finished the 7 hours, I slept for like 12 hours or something because I was so exhausted after the experience. Obviously because it's long, but also for how heavy the subject matter is. So yeah. Then we have Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker. And Tarkovsky is a filmmaker that I obviously could have had many of his films. I think probably like objectively, Andrei Rublev probably should have been here. I could have had Solaris, Mirror. I ended up going with my personal favorite, which is Stalker, which we also talked about on the podcast. And yeah, another film that's one of the greatest films of all time, and it's absolute perfection in every single way. So yeah, this is like a personal pick. I think Ronin even had this one. So it's Kihachi Okamoto's The Sword of Doom, which we will have a discussion on the podcast. Yeah, but it's this kind of nihilistic, very dark, quite action-packed samurai film from the mid 60s, and Tatsuya Nakadai gives a performance of a lifetime, and Toshiro Mifune has a very small role here, but it's one of the best kind of small roles in any film ever. I think like he has this like very badass scene in the snow in one point of the film. That's one of my favorite scenes in cinema history. I absolutely love that. And this is just so beautiful aesthetically, both the shots, but also kind of the set design and the locations and stuff like that is just absolutely amazing. I love the very manic ending as well. Yeah, this is just one of those films that I always think about, and kind of I'm always in the mood for watching that one. Then, of course, I had to have one Eric Romer film here, and I decided to go with the one that means to me the most, probably like in terms of emotionally and thematically. Of course, Criterion is lacking with Romer. They have the Four Seasons, and then they have the Six Moral Tales, but they don't have the comedies and proverbs, and they don't have Four Adventures of Reinette and Mirabelle. And Four Adventures of Reinette and Mirabelle might be my favorite um, Romer film, even though I don't think it's his best, but it's my favorite. Like I always say that I want to get two dogs, name them Reinette and Mirabelle. So my dream is to get like two beautiful Samoyeds, and again, one of them will be Reinette and one of them will be Mirabelle. But we'll see if that ever happens. Yeah, but such a beautiful film about love. Yeah, and this is just one of those films that I always talk about with my good friend Tony. So shout out to Tony as always. Yeah, every time I see this poster, it just makes me think about Tony. So yeah, yeah. Then we have Taste of Cherry by Abbas Kiarostami, which is my favorite from him, even though he made so many great films like the Coker trilogy. I think all of those films are masterpieces. Certified Copy is great, like Someone in Love is great. Uh, the Wind Carry Us. What's the whole title of that film? I can't remember, but that film is like a 5-star film as well. And yeah, but this is just a one I think that I like the most for whatever reason. Yeah, it has a very interesting concept. It punches you in the face in the end. How it kind of where it takes the narrative in the end. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, incredible film. Then of course I have to have Ozu here, as he is one of my absolute favorite filmmakers ever, and these days I kind of consider him to be maybe the GOAT. Yeah, because he's just so good. This is Tokyo Monogatari. I could have gone with An Autumn Afternoon or Late Spring, but I ended up going with the big masterpiece, the most famous one, Tokyo Monogatari. Yeah. Then we have our third and final documentary, so it's Tongues Untied by Marlon Riggs. And in the Criterion collection, this is in the Marlon Riggs box set that I desperately want to get, but I don't have it. It's pretty expensive to import from the US as it never got the UK release, but hopefully I can one day get it. So this is about what it means to be like black and gay. Obviously, when you're part of two, oppressed groups at the same time, how hard it can be. Yeah, but I think this is an incredible documentary, very creative documentary, very unique documentary, and it's about a very important subject. Yeah, so love it. Then we have Orson Welles representation here is The Trial, and F Citizen Kane. This is the masterpiece from Orson Welles. I know, hot take, but to me this is just his best, like aesthetically, absolutely incredible. The atmosphere, absolutely incredible. Anthony Perkins, absolutely incredible. The novel is absolutely incredible, and this is such a great adaptation of Kafka. Of course, Kafka is an author that is really hard to adapt into film, but I think Orson Welles did a great job. Then the last five, well, this film I talk about in every video. It's The Entourage of Cherbourg. Yeah. Then we have my favorite Godard film, although again my favorite Godard film is divided between this Vivre sa vie and La Chinoise. Again, I can never really decide which one I prefer, but I think La Chinoise is maybe a bit more entertaining and funny. But this is the Godard film that probably packs the most emotion. This is the film that you can show to people who say that Godard is always so cold, because I think this one has lots of emotion. Now the shots of Anna Karina, the close-ups, oh, some of the best close-ups ever. And I'm such a big Anna Karina fan. She's one of my favorites, and yeah, very creative film. quite innovative film, like the early Godard stuff tended to be. But yeah, absolutely incredible film. This one we just talked about on the podcast, it's Werkmeister Harmonies. And I said on the podcast that to me, this is probably the greatest film that has been made in the 21st century so far. Again, aesthetic perfection. It just has so many relevant themes about, again, conservatism, fascism, kind of how people fall into madness and stupidity so easily. And then it has those religious angles there as well, but it's just such a thought-provoking film and incredible film, and actually, to me, it's my favorite Bellator film even over Satan Tango, so yeah. Then rest in peace, Gina Rowlands. In this film, she gave one of the greatest performances of all time, so it's a woman under the influence. It was pretty brutal, again, losing two of my favorite actors inside a week, so Alain Delon and Gina Rowlands. Again, I absolutely adore both of them, and both of them are in my top 10 actors of all time, so yeah. And I think this is Gina Rowlands' like best performance. Again, she is just absolutely insane here, very raw emotionally. And yeah, this film in general is such a powerful film. Yeah, I love Cassavetes, and yeah. And then to end the list, we have Edward Yang's Yi Yi. Again, Taiwan is a great country for cinema, and Edward Yang is one of the goats of Taiwanese cinema. And this is, to me, Edward Yang's best film. I've seen, I think, 5 Edward Yang films: Yi Yi, Brighter Summer Day, Terrorizers, Confusion, and Taipei Story. So I haven't seen Mahjong, and I haven't seen what's the like the, I think the first film from like the was it from like 1983. Can't remember what that's called, but I haven't seen that one. But yeah, this is such a great film, one of the best slice of life films ever made. So anyway, let me know what would be your CC40 alternative box set, and let me know what you think of my alternative box set, and let me know what you think of Criterion's box set, or you can also tell any of your thoughts about Criterion in general, or their kind of wider November announcement. I think many people were really excited about the November announcement, but I wasn't. So yeah, yeah. But anyway, this was a fun exercise, and I had to leave out so many films, which was really hard. Again, I had this at like 43 films for a while, and then it was really hard to cut out those last few. Yeah. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Don't drink Coke at all. Sayonara and arigato gozaimashita.